Welcome back. Today I will be installing the Airlift Load Lifter 5000 on the truck. I have had some helper springs and I didn't like the way they rode, so I decided I would replace it with the airbags. The good thing about this is when I don't have a load, I can let the pressure out of the air bag itself and then get the ride quality back that I had before. So stick around, I'll walk you through the steps. The first thing I've done is removed the spare, the heat shield, and then the rear wheels and tires themselves. You need to have the axle unsprung so that you get all access and to put the bags in underneath there. And the way I've done this was I have put my jack stands right there in front of the spring pack. You'll see there's a place on the frame you can grab it. That way I was able to let the jack stand down. The axle is hanging free, and then I have the most room to go ahead and work while I'm putting these bags in. So here is what all comes in the kit. Now I'm going to do this a little out of sync with the instruction manual because I want to crawl under the truck once, so I'm going to do this a little out of order. And what I'm going to do first is assemble the air springs. And what they want you to do is you have identical brackets. One's going to be the left side, one's going to be the right side. They want you to install a carriage bolt in the innermost hole. So that's the first step to assemble the air spring. The next step here is to take your spring, the side that has the two holes, and take this piece and align it on there so that you have the two holes that show up. And then we're going to put these two holes and align them on the innermost part of the bracket. We'll do that for both sides. So with the air spring, as I showed, with the holes aligned, you want to take this bracket and align them on the two innermost holes. That will hold this bolt in place while you put in the two bolts here to hold the spring to this bracket. Once you get those started, go ahead and tighten them down and torque them to the specified setting. Once you've gotten this side done, we'll go ahead and do the same thing for the other air spring. So we'll turn the springs over, and then out here in this center hole, we'll install these swivel fittings, finger tight, and then take your wrench and give them another 1.5 turns. There's 1.5, and then this guy will just poke back out. Do the same for the other side. The next thing we'll do is install this bracket on the top, and we'll line it up with the two holes here on top, just like that, and then install the two bolts here on top. Once we get that finished, then we'll want to measure from the deck to the top of this fitting for a measurement of less than 7/8 of an inch. The hardware for these ones are bolt, lock washer, flat washer, and that gets installed in here. Once you get those installed, go ahead and tighten those down to the specified torque. Once you've got these torqued down, then you'll want to measure to make sure you're less than the 7/8 of an inch, which I am. At this point, both air springs are completely assembled and they're ready to be installed. So now I'll go back to step one. So hopefully you pick this up, but I missed a step. So now I need to go back and do it again. But I forgot to put the top one on. So before you put these bolts in and torque them down, this one needs to go on top. So I'll do that now for both of those springs. So this is what the springs will look like with the correctly being assembled, where the cup is over top of the spring. And then don't forget to measure from the plate to the top of the spring. So what we're going to do first is remove these two bolts and replace them with these two longer ones and spacers to move this bracket back away from the frame so we have room for the bag install. When those are installed and torqued down, this is what that bracket will look like. Then we can move on to the next step, which is removing this jounce spring, which is held in by a 10mm bolt, and you'll need a deep socket to get up there into it. Next, on both sides of the truck, they want you to go ahead and remove the two outermost Torx bolts, which are T40s. There's one here. I have to find where the other one is because it's underneath the spring, I believe. But remove the two outermost and it may help to actually loosen up the innermost. But that'll be the next step. With the jounce spring removed, the next thing we're going to do on both sides of the vehicle is come underneath here on this side, and you'll see this bolt right here. We're going to remove that, and then we're going to install this bracket to lower this piece. So when you're finished, it will look like that. Where you have the new one down below. This one also has a nylon locking washer on the back, so you'll want to use a wrench on the back side while you tighten on the front. Repeat for the other side. So the next thing we'll do is we'll install this bracket on the front side of both sides of the axle. It just goes in here, and this is why you have to remove the two bolts that hold this guard on. It'll just kind of sit in here loosely until we go ahead and get the air spring in, and then we'll go ahead and tighten things down. Okay, so the next step here is to install the air spring assembly onto the jounce bracket, the lower part of that. So with the valve stem pointing out, it points towards the outside of the vehicle, and it will sit in here on the platform, and I'll show you what that looks like when we get it installed. So this is facing the back of the vehicle. You will use this bracket and align this tab to the notch that's in the back of the spring assembly, and then you'll use the two carriage bolt holes and the two nuts on the back side where this locates up into where the jounce spring would bottom out. So there's two in the back and one in the front. Go ahead and get those tightened up to the specified torque rating, and we can move on to the next step. Alright, so after you get those bolts torqued and tightened down, the next step in this process, if you don't have a fifth wheel, is to throw these U-bolts over the frame. If you've never dealt with the General Motors frame, it's got a coating on it, and when you rub up against it, you turn that color. So be careful. So once you get the U-bolts over, the next thing to do will be to raise the axle itself so that you can guide the U-bolts through the holes on the top. So at this point in the install, you should have everything somewhat looking like this, all torqued down. And now you're ready to start putting things back. And by that I mean it's time to go ahead and put the bolts back in to these guards on both sides of the truck. So once you get to this point, it's time to install the air lines. I'm going to put the air lines to a T and then fill in one location. They have it where you can fill individually if you want. I want them both at the same time. I'm going to use the hole for the license plate in the rear as the location for my fill for the Schrader valve. I'll go ahead and get that all set up and then show you where it's at. Once you get it all set up, you'll want to put a little air in and then take some soapy water to all your connections to see if you have any leaks. And if you do, you'll want to fix those before you wrap this up. Okay, so on this side I routed the wire through the frame, as you can see there, then along the wiring harness up above where the spare tire carrier is, down here where I put a T-junction so that I only have one fill spot, and there it is, and through the license plate. And then on the other side I went up and over the shock tower, above the cross member on the frame, and then again through the back and along the wiring harness to the T where it goes to the back. And if we look here, you can see that right there is the one fill for the both bags. So now it's time to check for leaks. So as you can tell, I have no leaks, and I've done this with every connection. Sprayed some soapy water on. If it was leaking, you'd see bigger air bubbles coming out. That's just bubbles from the suds that I sprayed on. So now it's time to go ahead and wrap this back up, put the heat shield back on, spare tire up, and the tires on, and get this thing back on the ground. So there it is, the install's all done. And again, you can see the Schrader valve right here on the bottom half of the license plate. Not sure if you can spot the airbags in there, but there they are. You want to keep them at a minimum of 5 psi when you're not loaded, but other than that, it was a pretty easy install. Thanks for watching.